Okay, so if you're a Jew back then, what would your application be? So you're a Jew and you're reading this Song of Solomon, and you see this Gentile enemy slave girl desiring a close, intimate relationship with Solomon. Uh, you're a Jew at the time. You're probably thinking, how can this be? And the point is how could it be that a Gentile enemy slave girl can desire, let's put ardently desire, you know, how can it be that a Gentile enemy slave girl can ardently desire close intimacy with a holy king of Israel? And especially in marriage, right? So she wants that in marriage. That ought to be pretty bizarre for to see this happening. When the daughters of Jerusalem are witnessing this, in you go to 1:5, Song 1:5, 1, 2 to 4. Let's put 5 in there. She says, "Dark am I, yet lovely, daughters of Jerusalem," and she doesn't want them to stare at her. So, because she's dark, she's a slave girl, right? Don't stare at me because I'm dark. So she's getting stared at and judged by the daughters of Jerusalem, which are Jews, right? So, from a Jew back then, you're a woman. Okay, don't stare at the Gentile that desires a closer, more intimate relationship with a Messiah of Israel. And the reason they can't stare at her, you'd have to go all the way to 8:6, is for love. For love is. There's certain characteristics of love that drew her closer to him, and the reason they don't have to stare at her, the Jews back then, is because she had love in her heart. She had repented. She wasn't just the Gentile enemy slave girl. Okay, and then now we got application for the Christian. For the Christian, here you have a woman desiring a closer, more intimate relationship with man because of the delightfulness of his love. How much more so? How much more delightful would a closer, more intimate relationship with Jesus be? Right? If you think about it, Solomon is just a man. He was gifted with unmeasurable wisdom, and he had an unquenchable love. But that his love to that woman wouldn't compare. Jesus is an infinite flame. Yeah, his was a mighty flame. A flame above all other flames in Solomon's heart for the woman, but Jesus' heart for his bride is the source of all love, and it's an infinite love. It's unmeasurable. It just is far and above and exceedingly beyond anything of Solomon's love to his wife. Even no matter how great it was that we see it in the song, and it's amazing. He's a chief lover among 10,000, but Jesus is even above Solomon. So that's why I say, how much more delightful would it be to have a closer, more intimate relationship with Jesus? And that closer, more intimate relationship with him comes, and it will come by the woman. What? Because she prayed for it. So pray for a closer, more intimate relationship with God, right? Yeah, just as she prays for a closer, more intimate relationship with the type of Christ that was alive at that time, Solomon was a type of Christ, and she wanted a closer, more intimate relationship with the greatest type of Christ alive at the time. And Jesus is greater than Solomon. And Solomon was like Jesus, but Jesus is even greater. And so how much more so should we desire a closer, more intimate relationship with God? And so pray for it. Pray for a closer, more intimate relationship with God. Be sincere when you do that for the Christian, okay? And, how do you do that? Basically, read your Bible and obey. Not to get into a whole lot, I just like to keep it simple. Here, the advice for the Christian, and the advice for the Jew back then, particularly the woman, so that was advice for them. And they can argue too, so the Jew back then can argue also God's love to each true Jew. God loved each true Jew. He had a close and intimate relationship with every true Jew back then. But that relationship is much greater than the intimacy and relationship that Solomon had with his wife. So when you see this woman wanting a close, more intimate relationship with Solomon because of the delightfulness of his love, the sweetness and delightfulness that of God's love to Israel is better than Solomon's. So the God of Israel has a greater delightfulness to his love. So to have a right view of love, right? There is a sweetness and there's a delightfulness of the experience of God's love. And the woman experienced God's love through Solomon, but Israel as a whole experienced God's love to them, which is more intimate, and it is sweeter than just a man's love to a woman. God is going to send a sacrifice that's going to be a substitute for their sins. I mean, what greater act of love could God do than to send a substitute for their sins, which was typified in the sacrificial system? A lamb would die in their place. And so God's love to Israel in providing a substitute for their sins is a much greater act of love than Solomon could ever do to his wife in marriage. It just doesn't compare. So the Jew back then should argue from the lesser love in the song to the greater love of Yahweh, we'll say. YHWH. Okay, so see that there's different applications. If you're a Jew back then, if you're a Christian now, for the woman and the man. And then I'll go over more of this verse in the next post. Hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, hit a like. Any questions, ask below. You can go to my website, solomonsongofsongs.com, and read these blog posts if you'd like. God bless you, and see you next time.